All right, so we're live, and welcome to the corridor. I'm Angel Leo. I'm the founder of Coqui Ventures, and this is the show where the conversations about Puerto Rican and Latino founders, culture, venture capital happen. My guest today is Dianis De Jesus. She's a creative leader, brand strategist, and the founder of Puerto Rico Creativo, which is basically a publication and movement making the case that creativity is a connective tissue of the new Puerto Rican economy. I brought Dianis on to the show today because she's making an argument that I think basically changes how we see what is being built on the island right now. The transformation happening in Puerto Rico is not the one most people came looking for. I feel it's bigger. And like Dianis, would approve of, it starts with creativity. So Dianis, welcome to Recorder, and can you, introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Angel. I really appreciate you having me here. It's an honor. I'm also working from the diaspora in the last decade, so I really understand, where you are and what you're seeing. My name is Dianis De Jesus, and I have been the co-founder of Puerto Rico Creativo, which started as an advocacy project, really to bring awareness of the importance of the creative industries and the creative sector beyond cultural creators, right? So we know Puerto Rico is rich in culture and creativity. We see that, we live that. It's been our history, but in today's world, creativity is really playing a bigger role in many ways. And as the Puerto Rican entrepreneurial ecosystem was taking shape, I had the honor of bringing this topic into that conversation and starting connecting the dots into what role creative industries and creative talent can play in the economic development and economic future of the country.
Excellent. And so I wanted to thank you for the introduction, Dianis. But I wanted to start basically with one of the main arguments, right, that you're making, because I think that most people hear creative economy and they picture design studios, ad agencies, things like that. And of course, you're making a much bigger claim. What do you actually mean when you say creativity is the infrastructure in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, so again, being outside, I think, allows me to bring in, some of these paradigm shifts that we're seeing in the world and in other cities. I have the privilege of being, working in New York and also in San Francisco, and so creativity has risen, especially as technology continues evolving, to a much more strategic role, right, in the entire world. We are seeing creative talent embedded in all sectors, so across and outside what are typically the creative industries. That doesn't mean that the development of the creative industries themselves doesn't matter. I think it all needs to happen, right? But that talent that goes into other sectors beyond the creative industries has become increasingly important, right? And so the creative economy encompasses what happens in the creative industry. So theater, culture, music, all the things that we think about when we're thinking about creativity, but it also encompasses creative talent that is operating in other sectors, right? And so I think the pandemic was a really good catalyst of really recognizing and pushing that to be much more obvious, where everyone started to need transformation, pivoting, digitalization. And so those were the moments in which I think were very eye-opening across the world, but in Puerto Rico as well. And so creative talent became, it brought a spotlight, right, to what our role is and how important it is to really embed these professionals. I tend to, can be a little controversial, but in the past, we've been perceived more as service providers. So somebody that comes in, executes something, and then, it's not really pushed into a more strategic place into different organizations. And so now what we're seeing is the critical importance of creative talent to be placed in more strategic places in organizations, so we can become, also thought partners, right? And people that are actually helping navigate, especially these moments of transformation.
And you published the publication, the first edition, right, was in 2023.
No,
Is that correct?
the
2018.
2023 is this one, which is the second one.
The second one, got it. Okay, and then that one was basically sort of the same approach, though, right? Interviewing people across academia, government, and the industry, right? So, what was the core argument of that publication, of the one that you have in front of you, right?
Yeah, so this publication, and anybody watching this, you can go to puertoricocreativo.com and you can have a digital version for free. So basically, it's really great to see, because I take some time between one and the other. So in the beginning, we were really thinking about the creative economy as the individual sectors and what we could do in each creative industry. But this one is really looking forward into what's coming next, what I call the new economy, right? And so what I do with this publication is I bring people together that I think need to be talking more. So I bring in people from academia, government, leaders of the ecosystem, of all the different, we have built an amazing ecosystem. So we have from early stage all the way to, entities like Endeavor International, who are like really bringing those companies more globally. And so I bring leaders from everywhere and I put them together really to talk and look at each other, and also the professionals. And so I interview all of these people and create an analysis, also looking out at trends. I'm a strategist by trade, so I look at trends, global trends, things that are shifting, and I do an analysis of all that to understand what should we be looking at in Puerto Rico. And so in a nutshell, the spotlight was in the creative talent, a talent that historically has been leaking. I mean, I am I'm a great example of somebody that wasn't able to grow my career in the island at some point back in time. And I had to go to Chicago and then New York to grow, right? And so that is something that we don't have the luxury anymore. I mean, the economy and the way that economic development is working globally is that talent is really becoming essential, right? And so talent retention, nurturing that talent, and making sure that there's a good strategic way of bringing that talent into promising sectors is key. So to one point, there's a quote in the book in which the main leader of the World Economic Forum talks about, we are shifting from capitalism to talentism. And so I love that. I love that notion of talentism, because it makes you understand that it's no longer capital. Capital is not enough. Like, you really need the thinking, and creativity as a concept is also something that the World Economic Forum is bringing on top as like critical, especially as technology continues to evolve. And so this idea that I have another quote in the book that says, we can have innovation without innovators. We can have creativity without creatives, right? And so we have this notion of what creativity is, yet we don't completely make that connection that creative talent is what brings in creativity.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, and the argument that you present mostly, right, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that creative talent is not just a cultural asset, right? For Puerto Rico, it's more of an economic one, right? It's basically the substrate underneath every category that scales in the island or outside of the island, right? I want to hold on to or onto that and go sectors by sector here, right? Or not necessarily sector by sector, but just to touch up on a few of them specifically. In terms of, you have published, and actually before we move on to that point, let me ask you one thing, because I think that part of, your publication, right, it's also, again, that it's a set of interviews and there's different perspectives, right, that come across that publication because you're interviewing a lot of different minds. So before we move on to the specifics of the sectors, give me some examples, or just one example of from your publication, right, of a company, a founder, an executive, right? Anyone where the creativity was clearly the engine, right, underneath their business. And what is it that you think that you learn from it or they learn from it?
Yeah, so there's to put case studies because they really make this is very, theoretical, strategic, and so case studies really make it real. And so there's two great examples, and the examples came again interviewing the ecosystem leaders, right? And so Woven Wear is one of like the best cases in Puerto Rico that somebody from the director of Guayacan actually suggested they are outliers, right? Outliers, like really really outstanding example of what's possible. In this case, this example has not only one of the founders, Cristian Carlos Melendez, but it includes Dana Montenegro in this photo. So Dana has been also a leader in the design thinking, design strategy space, a creative leader, right? So he became a side by side, these two founders, a key person in taking the company to the next level as a chief design officer. Okay, so that's one example of how, in this case, it was a company that was really already well established and needed to, at that point, I think they got acquired by an international, a key international player. And so Dana was critical in transforming how they were working internally, how they were servicing their clients, and everything that the company needed to really behave, at for that growth and serve for that growth. So that's one of the examples in terms of a company that has been all the way from the beginning, nurturing the local ecosystem all the way to acquisition. Then there's Raincoat, with another outlier. And in this case, you have a co-founder who is Jonathan Gonzalez, right? And I'm going to show you guys this photo, super cute. And so Jonathan he's an engineer. This company really exploded after the hurricane, right, in 2017. And so he acknowledges how he was also nurtured by the ecosystem, but he's an engineer and a design enthusiast. So he recognized and understood the importance of creativity and design because he himself appreciates it. So in a moment of growth, again, he brought in Miguel Miranda, who's another very recognized creative leader in the island, to become that chief design officer, working side by side the co-founders, right, and taking the company to the next level. And so it doesn't always have to be chief design or chief, anything. What this means is that creativity needs to sit at the business table. We're not just executors, which is sometimes, and it's happened to me. I'm a very senior creative leader that sometimes ends up executing things, right? And so we need to sit side by side with these founders to really translate, something that may have launched a startup into a more sophisticated product, into something that really serves needs, into something that transforms into a very complex, evolving landscape. And these are companies that are, Raincoat, for example, is in the insurance space. So you're talking about spaces that are not cultural creative, like entertainment or fun. It's like really complex sectors that require, ways to communicate better. Like, for example, Miguel offers a great example of how the communication was very technical, and how he had to humanize it, simplify it. How do you translate engineering into consumers, right, to serve better the needs? How do you create interfaces that are friendly for people to come back? How do you brand something so people recognize how different it is? So all these layers of storytelling, branding, narrative, product design, these are the areas in which creatives need to come in way more holistic, integrated ways, not just what a founder may think they need. Is really come in, sit side by side with me so we can figure this out with creativity and design.
Yeah, definitely. I've experienced that myself with a few startups in the past where the founder is so technical, right, that they sort of don't have necessarily that creative side of skill set, right, and they struggle a lot of times, right, to just say what is it that they're building, what is it that they're doing, right, and at that point goes more into the storytelling side of things, and they tend to struggle a lot because they're so technical. That every jargon they speak, they may think, right, that you're understanding what they're saying, but sometimes it's really hard. So I think you make a compelling point there, and then to sort of transition from that, right, again into the different sectors. You made a point that I think it's important, right, that the founders being built in Puerto Rico right now are not in a single vertical, right? They span from tech to food to agriculture, consumer goods, right? It's a whole circular economy. So, what we and the audience, of course, right? Walk us through that, right? So, why is that breadth like a feature of it, right, and not necessarily a bug?
Yeah, well, I see Puerto Rico, and that's why I first, obviously, I'm proud Puerto Rican, right? But I also, Puerto Rico, because it's a smaller territory, it's a bubble for a lot of things that are happening globally. And then it's very obvious for people like you and me to see it, right? And so I think we're in a very interesting moment, Puerto Rico, and in the world, in which uh, all these challenges that are coming out of climate change, out of the politics, out of all economic ups and downs and downturns. And so this is forcing everybody, people, smart people, doers, operators, to think about solutions, right? And so we are landing into what I call the new economy in very organic ways. I also worked in Silicon Valley, so I know what's bubbling there as well. And so in Silicon Valley, you're coming from more strategic academic ways. So you have engineers, highly skilled people, Stanford graduates, thinking about what's next in solar, what's next in energy, what's next in transportation. So they're coming from that top down sort of academic place. And so in other parts of the world, like Puerto Rico, we're coming at it from a very human way. We're coming at insurance, we're coming at energy, we're coming at food, because our basic needs are suffering, right? And so as the governments are not able to meet these needs, you have great smart leaders coming at them. And so I had the fortune to collaborate with the Inter-American Development Bank some years ago in a research in which we were looking at some similar, that was my first book, similar landscape in Latin America, right? And so Latin America is a great example of bubbling innovation because the governments are constrained. And so people are coming up with all the solutions about, food, homes, energy, financing, all of these things. And so there's a lot. I have the book that has 50 examples of like top innovations. And so that was 2017. We are seeing a lot more of that in the new generations of Parallel 18 and in the local ecosystem. We're seeing more and more founders getting into alternative energy, agriculture, transportation, or like housing. All of these things are coming up because that's the moment we are. And so
Mhm.
it's also beautiful because as we've built this ecosystem, these places like Parallel have become highly international as well. So you have a mixture, right? And so I have examples here that one of the examples is Clean Cold, which is non-toxic cleaning products. And so they are sustainable products in the way that they create they're thinking about their detergents, but also in their packaging that is cardboard. And so they are really an example of this emerging economy that I call new economy. And so these are founders from New York that then came to Puerto Rico and were really had the opportunity to grow, and they hire a person there that became their top, creative leader in their company. And so you are seeing also this dialogue, right, between inside and outside of Puerto Rico, which is amazing. And so long answer to say that the moment we're living, the challenges we're facing, Puerto Rico and beyond, is leading with what I call impact innovation, which is not necessarily the most appealing. And this is something maybe you can build on in terms of capital investment. There's some challenges, right? Especially in the current administration in the US, but it's what's coming, and it's coming strong. And as a researcher that looks at Europe, Latin America, and everywhere, I'm able to already see how other regions of the world, Asia, Europe, are really, really moving strongly in a green economy, blue economy, and the creative economy sits at the center of that.
So you touched upon the diaspora there for a little bit, and what do you like across all these sectors, right? What do you think is the common pattern in these founders that most people outside of Puerto Rico are completely missing?
Outside of Puerto Rico, meaning the diaspora or the investors?
Yeah, the diaspora.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these things are coming from a very human, sort of, like I said, authentic way. And so Jonathan, the Raincoat founder, is a great example of, he just wanted to solve a problem for his mom. And he ended up becoming a founder because his mom needed help after the hurricane and she lost her home. She needed, insurance support. And so the authentic human part of what entrepreneurship has become and is becoming that's a real thing. A lot more founders are getting there like that. And that's not something that the system itself, especially, and this is something you probably can elaborate, but capital doesn't move like that, right? And so Jonathan is a great example. When you look deeper into his story, he had to also become an expert into how to ask for funding, get funding, where to go. And so he has a whole presentation about that that you may want to interview him for that. But it's somebody that had to maneuver this almost on his own, even though he had a great support from Puerto Rico ecosystem, but only go so far, right? And so once he finished that path and he needed growth and he needed capital, he had to figure it out by himself, right? And his story, his product, everything. And so your story, your founding story, may not be your growth story, right? His founding story is authentic, impact driven, all of the things that you think, oh, this is great, I have a great story, impact is not what gets capital. It's really a lot of different things, right? And so I think that's one of the gaps that we need to think about, because they're very important, critical businesses. And I'm an advocate for what that's doing, transforming our world, right? I'm a big advocate of impact, but that's not how the world moves, right? The world still moves on profits. And so how do we bridge that necessity, right, of a transformation in a world that is being depleted in so many ways, and the importance of these emergent solutions and new models of value creation that we need to support, fund, and allow to grow?
So Puerto Rico right now, and based on again everything you're saying, and like they have the talent, right? Oh, they have the founders, right? It has the creative or the current creative infrastructure that you're describing, right? What is in your own opinion, right? What is structurally broken in how the outside world sees it, right, and engages with it, right? So why is it right now sort of staying, in the island, right? And why is it that there's not necessarily that much traction, right, coming from the diaspora?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there, right? So I want to start by saying there's a lot of amazing things happening, like very committed people, super smart leaders. Like we do have a lot, right? And so we've made a lot of progress, and I have been embedded in the ecosystem. So I'm not talking from outside. I know these people personally, and I know the caliber of the leaders we have. I think there's still, obviously, our political landscape doesn't help us in many ways. And there's still a little disconnect also when you talk to especially foreign founders that end up in Puerto Rico. We still not tight. Like, I don't think we're still talking as much as we could be talking. That's why I love doing my book, because I really get people that I think need to be talking more to talk more. For example, the topic of talent. Everybody's like, oh, talent is important, talent, Mayagüez, the engineers. I don't think we have really looked at that statement in depth to understand what does it mean for the academia to form and connect the professionals that the ecosystem needs based on specifics of what is being built, of what are the promising sectors. Like that connection, as smart people as we have behind all of this, we are not looking each other in the faces as much as we need to, or having these conversations as detailed as we need to. So I really appreciate this space, because I think we need to be examining this way more. So I think there's got to be more interconnection, more strategic orchestration. And when it comes to the creative economy, we left it at some point, and so we moved, we moved with it. We articulated with the first law, but there's so much more that the world is doing with that the biggest economies that are really transforming and pushing forward, I don't know, like Middle East, Dubai, all these countries are really going deep into what it means to retain talent, to have the talent, to use the talent. And so I think at some point we left that on hold. And it's, people like me, I feel that we are continuing, and I will continue. I mean, I'm not stopping, but I think there's a lot of work to be more strategic about what talent means and what creativity means beyond a bad money movement, right? And so where culture is obvious and is important, critical, but it's not the strategic use of that talent is what we need to really go deeper and like really hold on to and be way more.
And so, and maybe this is your time to brag a little bit, right? So where does Puerto Rico Creativo sit in this puzzle then?
Yeah, I mean, Puerto Rico Creativo has always been a observer, advocate, right? So obviously this is a way for me to, and I think when time passes, this becomes even more relevant, because this tends to be foresight. And so it's interesting how this was published 2023, and 2026, it's way more obvious, right? And so that's the importance of somebody like me documenting, analyzing, and really bringing foresight, because then I have the tools to have conversations like what we are having. And so I sit as an observer, especially sitting in the diaspora, and I do a lot of so how do you say, autogestión, so self work that it's sometimes I do get support from the ecosystem, government entities, and so on. And I have to mention, I have an amazing co-founder, Ricardo Burgos, who's also been embedded in the island, and he's been key to open those doors of government and entities like Puerto Rico Science Trust. And so these entities are also understanding, the importance of things like this, but we can only do so much, right? And so I think the ecosystem has moved in a certain pace. And so I will continue to articulate this narrative that maybe, and our logo is connecting the dots. So I connect dots, and I bring awareness, and I promote a lot of events and things in which I can do what I preach, right? So support the talent, nourish the talent. I think talent right now is one of my main missions. So I have been invested in bringing that to visibility, right? Visibility to, there's a lot of us. We are here, we're making noise, we're making events, and especially the design community, which to me is what is probably the most critical in the emerging economies. So designers that support digitalization, that support everything I said, branding, narrative. So yeah, so that articulating is connecting, is promoting.
Dianis, this has been amazing. Learning again your perspective and your thoughts about all this. I definitely agree with you in terms of creativity having to be part, right, of that infrastructure of building, right, a business, not just in tech but in any other industry, for that matter. And I feel that now with in the era of AI too, this is yet another reason why creativity, right, should be very, very embedded and important when you're building, because it has that human factor, right, that I believe we're sort of losing very slowly.
I have to say something about that
Yeah.
because that's the conversation of the moment, right? And I think there's also this idea that it's like technology and AI are displacing
Hmm.
talent, and the reality is that we are becoming way more critical. So as a person that used to be in Silicon Valley, working there in the startup ecosystem, and in fact worked into an AI startup, and so the role I had was really in translating technical things and working side by between the CEO and the tech team, right, and all the
Hmm.
engineers. And so, creative talent are the ones that navigate ambiguity, that understand. Especially in this moment where everything is in flux and everything is new, uh,
Hmm.
teams have to become way more multidisciplinary. So long comment to say that technology is not displacing creatives. In fact, it's making them way more needed, right? And so
Hmm.
there's a report and an initiative in the UK that is called Createch, and so in which they are really tracking that convergence of creatives and technology, and they're really advocating for that importance, right? And it's an amazing. I learned a lot from UK because they are really advanced in the creative sector. And so Createch, anybody can look for that, will they track the importance of bringing those two together, and the strategic role they're playing in transforming entire sectors.
Very cool. So thank you so much, Dianis. Two more questions. One is, you have a Boricua founder or a Latino founder listening to this right now. They're building in any of the sectors that we've talked about in this show, in this episode, right? What is the one thing you will tell them, right, on how to position themselves and their work, right, for the next, let's say, year?
I think really take advantage of everything. I think the ecosystem sometimes is not as obvious, right? But everything is there. And so I think all these outliers that I have in my book, they're really examples of really taking advantage of everything that we have to offer. And the other thing is, just be open if you're local or if you're foreign in Puerto Rico. So be open to really looking outside the just jump starting, like sometimes entrepreneurs tend to be doers. Obviously, that's amazing, right? But thinking beyond what you know, and this is very general founder advice, right? So thinking beyond what you know and looking a little bit outside. And in Puerto Rico, the obvious place to look is creativity, creative talent. And so bring those in early on. I've been in that place where I'm in early on, and that's really an asset, really strategic. And so bring help early on. There's a lot of people in Puerto Rico willing to roll their sleeves and go there and build with you. And so if anything, these outliers are teaching us is that having that creative talent with them side by side has been critical to their growth.
That's amazing. And last question we ask everyone at the end: if Puerto Rico Creativo was a song, what song would that be and why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may be obvious, right? But I have to go with Bad Bunny, and I love the Vi Tirar Más Fotos. And it's not particularly because it relates to Puerto Rico Creativo, the actual publication, but it's because it really touches at the core of my entire work, and it's really about how amazing our country is and how rich and how much we have. And
Definitely.
so, especially when it comes to talent, Debí tirar más fotos, the actual song has that nostalgia of, something you left behind, which is something that touches me every single day. And so on a personal note, I really got into this work and so passionately because I wanted to create a space for me to go back to Puerto Rico and work in there and grow in there. And I acknowledge
Definitely.
this day, 10 years after, I haven't been able to do that. Like it's still
Mhm.
we're growing a lot, but unfortunately the growth hasn't been enough for a person like me, already a senior creative, to go back. And so I give a lot from outside, but we have a lot of work to do internally, so people like me don't have to go and really have that nostalgia that Bad Bunny captures in the song of, like, the places that that now are a memory. And I needed to take more photos because I don't have my aunt, I don't have my cousins, I don't have my beaches. It's a real sentiment, and I hope that we continue building so that talent stays, talent can grow, and we can really take advantage of this historic moment.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Dianis. This was great. Thank you for, again, introducing yourself, letting us know who you are, what you're building, what you're working on, and more than anything else, right? Those thoughts about creativity being infrastructure, right? Not just decoration, right? And these are the conversations, right, that I'm shooting for exactly to have in the corridor. The corridor is where pretty much all Latinos, Boricuas, and Latino allies hang out and have conversations, right, about what everyone's doing and how can we support each other. And the argument you are making, again, about creativity as an infrastructure, right? That is the reframe, I think, that changes how people see Puerto Rico, and that's sort of growing right now. And I hope that it keeps growing, and there's more people involved, right? So not one person can do it all, and we appreciate your part. More people need to be doing the same thing that you're doing, the same thing that I'm doing, right? And then helping each other, right? At the end of the day, there's got to be a support system, and that's what we're shooting for with the corridor and Coqui Ventures in general. So again, Diani, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you telling your story. And nothing before we go, actually, tell the audience like where to contact you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, well, thank you first. Thank you, and thank you for your vision. I think it's critical, and there's way more that we need to do from the diaspora. So thank you for opening that corridor, right? And so anybody interested in downloading the last publication, please go to puertoricocreativo.com. Dianis at Gmail. It's really a place or LinkedIn. I love collaborating. I love being in touch, and I'm very committed to all of this and to the country. So please feel free to reach out. I'm always talking to people. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dianis. And again, everyone, this is The Corridor, and The Corridor is the podcast from Coqui Ventures. And it's basically where all conversations about Latino, Boricua founders, Latino allies, and all those happen. And it's all about highlighting founders, highlighting venture capital, any experts and professionals that are out there that can also be part of the community. Again, thank you so much, Dianis. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you.